What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We're here to discuss Luke Rockhold's potential opponents. Obviously, he's been out in the press and media recently talking about how he wants to be returning and how that there's a lack of options and a lack of fighters wanting to face the former middleweight champion. So, I've got 4 fights here that I'd potentially like to see for Luke Rockhold should he want to return this year in the UFC, of course, and make his long-anticipated return. Maybe back to the UFC middleweight title. He's been talking about Israel Adesanya a lot, saying that Adesanya's beatable. So yes, let's go into it, but make sure to hit that subscribe button as well before we count down the 4 fights that I'd like to see for Luke Rockhold next. Now, the first fight for me that I'd like to see for Luke Rockhold is Nick Diaz. Now, of course, Nick Diaz has been talking equally as much as Luke Rockhold has about making a return to the UFC in 2021. He's been a lot more active on social media. He looks absolutely ripped and in phenomenal shape. To be fair, he's always in good shape, but there was a period where I think maybe Nick Diaz was partying a little bit too much, living the good life that he hadn't been able to maybe live as an athlete and a professional athlete who has to keep a strict routine. So maybe he's got out of the system and he wants to come back in 2021. And let's not forget he was suspended, of course, for marijuana, which obviously had no contest against Anderson Silva's last fight back in 2016, 2015. It left a blemish on his career, and unfortunately, at least now, marijuana is not a banned substance for USADA. So should that have popped in 2021, he would have been fine and been able to continue, or at least had a 3 months, 6 months out, not 5 years. But yes, obviously they fought back in January 2015, and if he is serious about making a return, obviously Dana White came out, I think it was after 260 or 261, about meeting with Nick Diaz and not being sure if he's serious and actually wants to fight. Let's put these 2 veterans together. These are both UFC Hall of Famers, huge names. Diaz, of course, as we said, fought Anderson Silva. Luke Rockhold never did, and I thought these paths probably would have crossed before. This was a little bit before my time, but obviously doing my homework I saw and found that these 2 hadn't fought. So, 2021, we are seeing some strange fights. Obviously, Tyron Woodley's fighting Jake Paul while Logan Paul's fighting Mayweather. But in MMA, let's see this fight. If Diaz is serious about coming back in this Rockhold, let's make it a 185. It sells out a pay-per-view, obviously not as a main event, but it's going on the main card. It could be a 5-round co-mainer, like we're seeing between Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz. But obviously, as we mentioned, both are UFC legends. Both are guaranteed to be in the Hall of Fame. Nick Diaz does a 26-9 record. He's coming off of 2 losses and that no contest, while obviously Luke Rockhold's coming off of 2 losses in MMA, 1 loss at Polaris in a grappling bout, and he needs to get back in the win column a bit. Those losses are against Romero and Jan Blachowicz when he tried to go up to 205 at 239, UFC 239, of course, and he got obliterated. But yes, the first I'd like to see for Luke Rockhold is Nick Diaz, and I think a lot of you guys probably would too, especially a lot of the OGs in MMA would definitely want to see that fight, I believe, and probably a couple of new guys that came to the sport and just want to see two absolute legends go at it for 3 or 5 rounds. Now this brings us on to number 2, and it is, of course, this one does have the question mark on it. It's Chris Weidman. Now, of course, Chris Weidman unfortunately suffered a horrendous broken leg at UFC 261 against Uriah Hall, but he's already walking again. And of course, that doesn't mean he's going to be in competition anytime soon or be in a camp anytime soon. He's got to, fully recover, and hopefully he seems to be on the path to a full recovery. But I'd like to see that one run back. Of course, Luke Rockhold did defeat Chris Weidman for the UFC middleweight title in what was quite dominant fashion in the end. But I think these 2 should probably square off again, and I think the time is right. Neither of these are in the UFC rankings at the moment, I don't believe, or at least Chris Weidman's not in the top 10. But yes, I think it should, if and when Chris Weidman makes that full recovery, if he does want to come back into the cage, it's probably a little bit too late for the ideal return for Luke Rockhold. I think Rockhold wants to probably fight, this year, whether it's September, October, maybe. Now, obviously, we're seeing a lot of the fights and schedules being fleshed out by the UFC at the moment. So if you want to see a Luke Rockhold fight, it's probably on the latter end of the year rather than in the summer. But should Chris Weidman be ready, he's going to be out probably 12 months, but if he's ready by March, February, and Luke Rockhold still hasn't got an opponent, I don't see why we couldn't run this one back. I think it would be a good fight. Again, another one you could put on a pay-per-view main card quite easily. two former champions, so it's a big fight. Obviously got previous rivalries, and I think that's a good bout. Both of them have had some bad luck in the latter ends of their career. The last 2 or 3 years for both Rockhold and Weidman haven't been great. Both tried to go up to 205, made that experiment, lost to Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz, who obviously fought for the vacant title. So it shows, had they won that bout, they probably would have been in a title bout for the light heavyweight title, and probably would have thought John Jones at the time, actually, had they won. So yes, Chris Weidman is second, but that is with a caveat of if and when Chris Weidman returns. Obviously, we send out his well wishes. But to see him walking, 4 or 5 weeks after that horrific leg break that we saw against Uriah Hall, is pretty impressive there from the All-American. Now that moves on to number 3, and it's Robert Whittaker. Now this one's a bit of maybe a left field pick again. I thought maybe in doing my homework that Robert Whittaker and Luke Rockhold probably would have crossed paths for thought, but of course these do have a familiar opponent in Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero knocked out Luke Rockhold, while Robert Whittaker went through 2 wars with Yoel Romero. But Robert Whittaker is currently number 1 contender. He's coming off that impressive win against Dan Till. He was supposed to fight Paulo Costa, of course. That didn't go to plan. Actually, it was Paulo Costa he was supposed to fight on 17th of April, of course. Kevin Gastelum stepped in on late notice, gave him that decision win. So he is on a 3-fight win streak at the moment. Darren Till and Jared Cannonier being the other 2 opponents. He's on the hunt back to the middleweight title, but of course Marlon Vettori and Adesanya are running it back at UFC 263 in 2 weeks' time. So I think this one could be a good scrap. It's a main event on a fight night card, or is a pay-per-view main card again. Worthy fight. Both former champs, Robert Whittaker, Luke Rockhold. Whittaker's on that hunt, but if Rockhold wants to bring his name into the lights of Adesanya, there's no better person to go through than Robert Whittaker. And again, 2 Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers, that is, of course. But yes, I think Whittaker, he's the only one at the moment in that top 5, top 6 with a free schedule at the moment. Paulo Costa's fighting Jared Cannonier, Till's got Brunson, and Vettori is fighting the champion. So Luke Rockhold versus Robert Whittaker does make a lot of sense to me. It's a great fight. You could put it in Australia, you could put it in America, of course. And it's probably the one on this list that I might be the most excited to see as a fan, of course. And the last one we're looking at is Uriah Hall. Now again, this has a bit of a caveat similar to Chris Weidman, the fact that Uriah Hall is fighting Sean Strickland at UFC 265. So he has already got a fight in his plan. He'll be in camp probably within the next 2-3 weeks, I'd imagine. But he is currently on a 4-fight win streak, having beaten Chris Weidman, Anderson Silva, Antonio Carlos Jr. and Bevan Lewis. He's really turned that little spell that he had of 4 losses and 1 win against Robert Whittaker, Derek Brunson, Gegard Mousasi. He beat Christoph Jutko and then lost to Paulo Costa. So he's really turned that form around. And he's on that hunt again. He seemed to put his mind games and his mental part of the game was always in question, but he seems to put that around, and he's putting some very good wins together. Now he is obviously 36 years of age, same age as Luke Rockhold, so they're both on their latter ends of their career. I put these in the brackets with the Chris Weidman, the Yoel Romero, the Anderson Silvas, as a generation that maybe passed in the batons over to the likes of, your Jack Mansons, Edmund Shabazians, your Marvin Vettori, Adesanya, I put in that as well. So, again, I thought this one would have been where paths would have crossed previously, but of course they haven't yet. And I think, Uriah Hall is 7th, 8th in that UFC middleweight ranking. I think these two could have a good scrap with each other. Again, it's a main card on a pay-per-view. It's a solid fight. Both of these are big names. Both of these bring good fans and a good audience together. They set out an arena. You could put it on a fight night main card, main event on a fight card, should I say. But, of course, it just has to depend on what happens between... Actually, maybe it doesn't have to happen... Maybe it doesn't have to depend on what happens with Sean Strickland. Maybe if he wins or loses, Uriah Hall versus Luke Rockhold is still an equally anticipated fight. But obviously the narrative maybe changes a little bit more. If Uriah Hall wins, it's probably two wins, maybe one very impressive win away from a title shot, you could say. With 5-6 win streaks, that's, in my opinion, when you're looking to fight for a title. But yes, those are 4 fights I would like to see for Luke Rockhold. Let us know in the comments down below. 1 out of the 4, Nick Diaz, Chris Weidman, Robert Whittaker and Uriah Hall, which of the fights would appeal to you most? And also let us know who you would like to see Luke Rockhold fight next as well, if he does make a return this year. Is it someone we've mentioned, or is it someone else possibly? Is it in 185, 205? He seems comfortable at 185. That 205 experiment I think is dead in the water. But you never know. Maybe he wants to have another crack at light heavyweight. No, he's not getting any younger, so that weight cut maybe is a little bit more taxing on his body, you could say. But yes, make sure to hit that subscribe button, make sure to drop this video a like, and go follow us on social medias, Twitter and Instagram at CageChat MMA, and also follow our Facebook page, CageChat MMA too, and I'll see you guys on the next video.